So I thought what we would do today is, we spoke a little bit about it in the past, display themes and the power of display themes and what benefits you can get out of them. Display themes display your AutoCAD MEP objects in different ways based on a set of criteria that you define. Our software comes with a couple preloaded display themes that are mainly used for the Revit to AutoCAD MEP fabrication. But today I'm going to speak about creating some new ones for use in your general day-to-day modeling. And one of the things that would greatly benefit the drafter would be to be able to see right away immediately that their duct might be above or below a preset elevation. So if most of your drawing might have a ceiling elevation of 8 feet and your duct, or excuse me, your structure might have a bottom elevation of, let's just say 13 feet, you know, as you're drawing along, you could have your duct immediately tell you whether it was above or below those elevations. And just to illustrate that, I'm going to go ahead and add a display theme that I've already created. To do that, I'm going to type in the display theme add command. And pretty much everything in AutoCAD MEP is what object are you working with and what do you want to do. So I'm working with display themes and I want to add them. Same thing with the duct add command, the MV part add command. And if all you can really remember is display theme, if you just type in display theme, it gives you a list of things to do, and I want to add. So I just click add. And I come up here and I'm going to choose one that I've already created for today called display theme open form elevation check. So I add this into my drawing, and right away you can see that my duct has colored up to be red. And let me get out of my display theme command. And let's try to look and see why my duct is coloring up to be red. I can see that this is my elevation checker. My duct is supposed to be green when the elevation is okay, and it's supposed to be red when it is not okay. So let's look at this display theme and see what we have. So I'm going to right click on it and go to edit display theme style, and it's going to bring up the display theme style property inside of the style manager. I'm going to make sure I'm on the design rule tab, and I see that I've created a line item here called elevation OK, and I want it to be green. And I come down here to the bottom, I want it to be green when my bottom of duct calculation is greater than 96 or 8 feet, and when my top of duct offset calculation is less than 156 or 13 feet. 13 times 12 is 156. So when these two items are true, my duct should turn green. If I click on the elevation not OK line, I have again the bottom of duct offset calculation when it is less than 96. So my duct has dropped below a ceiling elevation, and here I have or versus up here I had and. So here I said my duct needed to be above the ceiling and below the structure. Here I am saying my duct, if my duct is less than 96 or if it is below the ceiling, or if the top of duct is above 13 feet. So if either one of these is true, my duct is going to turn red. And in this case, both of these had to be true in order for it to turn green. So let's go back to our drawing here, and we can see right away that this bottom of duct is at 10'2", that's above 8 feet, but the top of duct is at 13.6, which is above our 13-foot threshold. So if we come down here and if we just modify our elevation here by 6 inches, we can see that it went down to 13 feet, but if you notice I said it had to be less than 13 feet. So I can come in here and just change my elevation here on the property palette. This time I'll move it down 2 inches. So now it's below 13, and you can see right away that my duct colored up green. And since this duct is basically inside the contour of this duct, it's going to be green also, all the way around. But if I was to say, take this duct here, and I remove it, and I'll go ahead and remove this short piece, and if I move this up, say 3 feet, we can see right away that it turns red. And if I put in a offset here, we can see that the offset, the OG, will stay green. That's because its first connector, connector 1, it started out to be correct. And the property set that we are looking at, which is the bottom of that offset tag, refers back to connector 1 of the fitting, and connector 1, which is here, is okay. Its elevation is correct. It's the connector 2 elevation and all subsequent duct that is incorrect. So this display theme is active. If I select it, I can disable it, and everything is normal the way it was before. So you can take these and move them off to the side of your drawing as you're going along. If all of a sudden you decide that you want to check your elevation, you can just select the display theme and apply it, and right away you'll be able to see what's going on. So that's an elevation checker. If we go back into the display theme style, you can see that here is where I would change the elevation. So if now, I've come back and they've decided that my ceilings are now at 9 foot and not 8 foot, all I would have to do here is change this value from 96 to 108 and just hit OK. And then if any of these were below the ceiling, it would automatically update. And we can see from this value right here that they are actually quite a bit above the ceiling. And through your property sets, you can actually have that include your insulation. So you can check if your insulation is above or below the ceiling also. This was just a simple example to show you what you can do. I have another one that I have created previously, and to get to it, I'm just going to copy this one down here. Then I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to change the style to the lining check. And if you notice, it's not active. It has a line through it. The one that is active does not have a line through it. So if I come up here and I disable that one, you can see that the line went through it, meaning it's not active, and all of my duct went back to normal. So let's examine this lining thickness and see what it is. So if I come in and I edit the display theme style, which by the way, all I am doing here when I right click and go to edit display theme style, I'm just taking a shortcut. So instead of coming up to manage, hitting my style manager, expanding documentation objects, expanding display theme styles, and selecting my lining check, you can see here I have this display theme, all of this information here. Instead of going through all of those clicks, I'm just selecting this and saying edit it. And I have all of that same information minus the style manager tree. That information is being all filtered out. So let's look at what I did here to find out if lining was okay or not okay. So for this check, when I said lining was okay, I made the color 80. Then down here, I'm saying if the lining thickness from the EC duct system data property set definition, if that thickness is equal to 1, and from the EC duct system data property set definition, the system is equal to supply low pressure, then I want it to color it green. I'm also saying I want the lining to display as not okay if I have a lining thickness again that is greater than 1 inch and my system is equal to supply low pressure. And you notice here effectively I say and again. So what I am saying is if my value is 1, I want it to turn green. Here I'm saying if it is greater than 1, I want it to turn red as long as I'm still on my supply low pressure. And actually, probably a better thing to do would be to say if my lining thickness is not equal to 1. So what I am saying is everywhere I have a system of supply low pressure, if I have lining thickness, I want it to equal 1. So now when I hit OK, I come over here and I apply this display theme, you can see that some of my duct is colored up. So let's go look and see. This duct here is colored green, so let's look at its properties. And let me just select the duct here. So I can see that this system is supply low pressure and my lining thickness is 1. This system here is not colored up because it is a supply medium pressure system. And if you remember from my display theme, it should only get color if it's a low pressure system. So effectively what I am saying here is my low pressure system should always have a lining thickness of 1. It might not be practical, but that is what I am checking for in this display theme style. If I come over here and I change this lining thickness to 2 inches, it does nothing. But if I come back and change it to 1, it colors up. Now, let's go back and look at this style again, and let's change this back to greater than 1. Come back here and look, and I actually modified the wrong one. I wanted this to stay, because I'm on the lining OK line, I wanted that to stay to equal to 1. Then down here I wanted to change this to greater than 1. So I modified this just a little bit. So the lining OK I kept the same. If the lining thickness is equal to 1 and my system is equal to supply low pressure, turn it green. For my lining not OK, turn it red when my lining thickness is greater than 1 and my system is equal to supply low pressure. So then I'll say OK for this. And now you'll see that some of this has turned blue, no color applied at all. Same up here. If I come down here, my system is still supply low pressure, but my lining thickness is not equal to 1, nor is it greater than 1, so none of my coloring will take effect. If I change this to 2, it's telling me right away that, hey, you've reached your criteria, and let's turn that red. So an easy way to check if you have lining thickness applied to a duct that you should or shouldn't. You could certainly come in here and add a couple more lines to determine if the lining thickness was at 0, to not color it up. If it was at 0.5 to color it up, so different colors determining on the lining thickness, you know, how thick it's supposed to be. Some specifications call for different thicknesses depending on the situation. The one thing that this method cannot show you is, you know, if the lining thickness extends beyond 15 feet from the piece of equipment. So I'm not really showing a VAV box here, and this really isn't a true indication of a system, but this is one possible scenario for that. Another display theme that I've added into the drawing here. So I'll copy this one again, and this time I'll go to my wrap check. And like before, let's go in here and look and see what this display theme is doing. So for my wrap OK, I'm saying that for my EC duct system data property set, my property is insulation thickness. If that is equal to 2 and my system is equal to supply medium pressure, then turn everything green. For wrap not OK, I'm going to turn to red if my insulation thickness is greater than 2 and my system is equal to supply medium pressure. So the footprint of this is almost identical to the lining thickness. We just swapped our lining for our insulation, and we changed our system, and we changed our values. But other than that, it's pretty close to being almost exactly the same. So if I hit OK, then I come over here, and if I turn this display theme off, disable it, then I select this one and I apply it, we can see that nothing has colored up. Now I know, because I said it earlier, that I set this whole line of duct equal to supply medium pressure on my system. I come down here, I see that my insulation thickness is 0 for everything. I'm going to set my lining thickness to 0, but then I'm going to come in here and change my insulation thickness to 2, and right away you see that everything colors up. If I change this one to 3, you can see that I've added too much insulation. It knows right away. If I change it to 0, you can see that it does not color up because it has no insulation applied at all, and we were only checking for insulation greater than 2. We did not check for anything less than 2. And that is certainly possible to do. Let's see if I can do this beforehand, or let's see if I can do this now and not take up too much time here. So here I have the insulation thickness is greater than 2. Let's go ahead and make this simple, and let's add another wrap not OK. And here I'll just call this, instead of not OK, I'm going to say less than 2, and for this one I'll say greater than 2. So for the wrap less than 2, I would come in here and I would say that the insulation thickness is less than 2 inches. And I'm going to come in here, and with this line selected, I'm going to hit the plus, so I get another one in here, and where it says insulation thickness, here I'm going to say greater than 0, and our system. So looking at this, this should color up red for anything that is less than 2 and greater than 0. And if we did this right, if I put in a 1-inch value here, we can see that it colors up incorrectly, or it colors up correctly, and that is the red color, which means we have an incorrect insulation value. I could wrap both of these up into the same line, but to make it easier to show today, I'll keep them split. So that is a quick and easy way to determine if your insulation is not at the value you're expecting. And again, you can just switch back and forth between these display themes as you're drawing. So I'll turn this one on to see if any of my elevations are correct, lining, and wrap. So you can create display themes out of just about anything that you can create a property set for. Because if you notice, if we go back into one of these and edit it, we can see that these are all driven by our property set definitions. and whatever values they have, and then whether that value is equal to something or not equal, less than or equal, greater than or equal. So it's important to note that you can create anything you can create in a property set, you can create a display theme for. So for some things, some things to think about that we won't go over today, but you can create a display theme to call out any elbows where the radius does not equal the width. You can create a display theme that shows where your offsets are larger than what the SMACNA standard might say. Again, anything you can create a property set for, you can create a display theme for. Just to quickly go over these tabs real quick. The General tab is just the name of the display theme plus a short description. We just went through the design rules. The Legend format gives you a chance to define how the display theme is going to look in your drawing. So the title is this title right here that's shown, the wrapping. I could just as easily call this, instead of wrapping, call it installation. Then that's going to update our display theme block here, which is, if you don't print these out in your drawing, then it's probably not as important. But one thing to note is you can keep a display theme active and print your drawing, and it will print with these colors. So if you do, if you're happening to use the software to do some design work and you actually happen to set the CFM values on the duct, you can create a display theme to show the different CFM values. Again, anything that you can imagine and create in a property set, you can apply a display theme for. So let's go back real quick and edit that display theme style again. So, here is where you set your text and your height, and let's see what changing this to circle will do. And you can see here that instead of being a square, these are just changed to circles. Not a big change, but a change nonetheless. And then our Legend display properties, this is standard stuff if you've looked into the display themes, that when in a plan view or a model view, this is showing up as General. I can do a style override on that, and maybe I want to turn off the outer frame and the grid lines and the disabled marker, and hit OK and OK, and now I'm just seeing this text. Maybe turning off the enabled marker is not such a great idea because you can't see whether it's enabled or disabled. But that is certainly up to you, and just be aware that you can change that. So this was just a style override, because when I went in there, I checked the style override, so it modified it for this box only. If I was to come over here and check in General and do that, then it would modify it for everything. That's the difference between changing it for the style and applying a object level override. So if I go back and I change this and turn these back on, everything's back the way it was. And that's, what I have to say about display themes. If you're proficient in property sets, you're going to pick this up pretty quick and you'll be able to do a lot of cool things with it. If you're not very proficient in property sets, or you don't quite understand them, I would recommend that you study up a little bit on them first before you try to do too much with the display themes, because they do go hand in hand. Now, one other quick thing I would add to today before we wrap it up is we just got into editing the display style, the object display. So previously I came here and went to display properties. I could have also gotten there immediately by going to my edit object display. It brings the same dialog up, but again filtered just to that object display. Well, now I want to come over here and actually look at the ductwork and edit its object display. I'm going to edit it for plan view because I don't like the way out of the box we have the insulation or the lining set. So I'm going to come down here, and for my insulation I want to change my color to be yellow, and I don't like that it's a continuous line. I'm going to change it to be hidden. And the same thing for insulation hidden. I'm going to leave the color the same, and I'm actually going to leave the layer the same. So it's by layer is going to be controlled by this layer here. Now for lining, and I actually did that backwards. This was a setting that I wanted to make for lining. So let me revert that back to what it was. Come here to lining, make it yellow, and make our insulation hidden. But for the wrap or the insulation, I'll keep the color by block. I'm not too concerned about it. But I really don't like the hidden line or the solid line for the insulation. Instead, I'm going to come up here and click my show all my line types in the line type file. I'm going to come down, I'm going to get the dot ×2. And just hit OK. Then I'll hit OK here. And now maybe it's a little difficult to see, so I'm going to edit that again. Edit my object display, go into my plan, come down to my insulation. Instead of dot by 2, I'm going to pick up I need to make sure I check show line types in file. I'm going to hit my dot 2. A few more dots in the same amount of real estate. Then hit OK, then hit OK. So now I see the dots on the outside where I have lining, where I have insulation, and now for my lining I get a hatched or hidden line type inside of there. Looks a little bit better than what the solid lines do. Now we'll come back in and we'll do the same thing for the model display or isometric display. Now in the isometric display, I really don't want to do too much with my insulation because I kind of like to see it solid everywhere for coordination purposes. If I was to come in there and edit this the same way I did the plan view, but now if I cancel out of this, you can see I'm in model view now because it is the bolded one. I click on it. I come up in here for insulation, and if I change the line type to this dot 2 and hit OK, and hit OK, and OK one more time, you can see it shows the dots, but that could become a problem when you're exporting to a program such as Navisworks, because Navisworks will see these dots also, and it could cause a problem when trying to do interference checking, because these will show up as dots in Navisworks and not a solid object. So maybe the better thing to do is, I go back in here, let's leave this as continuous, and then maybe I will change my color to be a white color. Hit OK, hit OK. Then inside of MEP and inside of Navisworks, if your duct has insulation, it will be colored white. A very quick visual representation that your duct has insulation or not outside of AutoCAD MEP. Also, if I go back in here and edit the object display, if I go back in the model, I can also change the layer that this lining is on. I really don't see a good layer that's already in the drawing, so I'm going to back out of this. I'm going to go into my layer command, and I'm just going to take layer 0, and I'm going to say new layer. Then I'm just going to call this m-duct-wrap. Then hit OK. Now when I come back in here and edit my object display, I go in the model, installation, I can change to m-duct-wrap. Hit OK. Hit OK. Hit OK. Now that wrap is on a separate layer, and if I come up here and I scroll down to it and I find m-duct-wrap, I can actually turn that off, and that layer will get frozen or turned off and get removed from the duct. The installation is actually still there, you're just not seeing it because you've turned off that layer. It's not the preferred way of doing things inside of AutoCAD MEP, but if you're inside an external program such as Navisworks and you want to have control over that insulation, then that's the way to do it. And the same thing for lining, although since lining is inside your duct, you really don't need to do anything. It's not as important as the insulation. And in fact, when I'm in model view, I actually go into my object display and go in to model, and I turn off my lining. I don't want to see it because to me it's inside that ductwork, and it makes it more difficult to see what's going on when you get a lot of objects inside your drawing at the same time. So that the power of the object displays. Here I'm displaying my duct in one manner in isometric view. Here I'm displaying it in another manner. And depending on how you have your display themes or your display representations, it'll go back to even a different manner. So if you remember just a few moments ago, I said changing the layer of your insulation is not the way to really handle it inside of AutoCAD MEP, because you really shouldn't be turning things, your displays, on and off based on your layers. You should instead be using your display themes. So here, if I'm in MEP design, I can see that my insulation is on that layer here. If I go to MEP Basic 2 line, we can see that we still have the insulation. It's just changed its color. So I know that it's being displayed in a different manner. If I select it and go to edit that display, I can see that yes, instead of model, it's being displayed in the 2-line display representation. If I double click that, I could tell my insulation to just turn off, hit OK, and then hit OK. Then you can see that the insulation goes away. If I come over here and look in plan view and edit my object display, I can see that it also is being displayed in 2-line. That's a little different than what we just saw in the MEP design. If I switch back to it and select my edit object display, I can see that in plan view it's set up for the plan display representation, whereas in model view, I'll come over here and click it and edit it, I can see that it's using a model display representation. So you have control in MEP design to have the duct display one way in model and one way in plan. Whereas if you're in MEP Basic 2-line, it's going to display the same way in either of those views, whether it's a plan view or a isometric view. That's an out-of-the-box setting. All of that is 100% customizable, but it's a little bit more to get into than what we have time for today. I'm about to wrap it up, but one thing I just wanted to show you for duct, that you can also have an object override on duct and change it at the object level. So any changes you make when you select the object override are only going to appear on that object. So you turn your insulation back on, and maybe you want that duct, for whatever reason, to be red. Hit OK, then that duct is always red. One little trick that I've done in a pinch when I didn't have a sound attenuator was I placed a duct in there. I gave it the length of the sound attenuator. So in this case, you know, maybe the attenuator was, say, 60 inches long. Let's see, I need to turn on my dynamic input, and let's make this 60 inches long. Whoops. Tab 60 and 0.125. So it was 60 inches long, and I went in and all I did was in Edit Object Display, I had an override on it. So I went into that override and I just made the color the same color that I have for most of my MV parts, which is actually 94. I turned off the contour, turned off my connectors. Actually, I think I left my connector on, but all I really wanted to see was my insulation. I hit OK, OK, and I didn't change the color of my insulation. I got ahead of myself there. So if I come back in here, edit this, and this I'll turn back by block since I had turned that visibility off. So the insulation color, I had made 94. Then I hit OK, and I'll hit OK. And then on this piece of duct, if the sound attenuator was actually 4 inches larger than the duct itself, I just made the insulation thickness 4. And it gave me a pretty good, reasonable representation of what the sound attenuator looked like. And you know, I used that method in a pinch. Generally, I would have taken the time to create it as a parametric multi-view part and used that. But at the time, I wasn't working on my system. I was working on someone else's, and they needed a sound attenuator. So just by using, you know, the display theme, or excuse me, the display representation and object overrides, I was able to make one piece of duct look a little bit different than others. And in that same method, you could come in here, and I edit this one more time. I'll go to this override. And if I come into the hatching and turn the hatch on, then come in here and look at the pattern, I can come in here and let's see, predefined pattern. This angle's OK, hit OK, hit OK, hit OK, and then you can see that I've given that a hatch. And that hatch actually lives on that object. So as that object is moved, copied, duplicated, cloned, whatever you want to do to it, that hatch is going to go with it automatically until you turn it off.